Okay, sorry if I'm a bit hoarse. I have a bit of a temperature now. This goes to the heart of what it is I'm trying to get you good folks to learn. And we've really been discussing this for the past few weeks. With this week 3 paper, post, and everything that you're working on, emotions versus logic, how you feel versus the fact, the data versus your opinion. 99.9% of people, I'm raised Republican, so therefore I'm going to find facts that coincide with my worldview. Or I'm raised Democratic, and I'm going to find facts that coincide with my worldview. How many people are critical thinkers? You're in the medical world. And never before have we seen politics and medicine clash more than with the coronavirus right now. We have Georgia and Tennessee reopening tattoo parlors, massage parlors, restaurants, you name it. And the state of California and other states saying stay at home, do not dare reopen your businesses, social distancing. Somebody's wrong and somebody's right. So when you choose your article and you start to argue, please do your best to say to yourself, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe everything I believe is. The most intelligent people don't say that they absolutely are wrong, but they always say, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not right about this. Okay? Maybe I didn't, blah, blah. The other day, I thought I was doing something right on Blackboard. I was like, oh, it was pointed out to me. I was like, I said, you're right, I'm wrong. I forgot a step. Okay? So it's the most intelligent people and the best people to say sometimes maybe I'm wrong. Now, moving on. Let's say I choose an article, and just as an example, I found an article, it's very controversial. It's from the Washington Post. That is a legitimate news article from March 23rd. Trump says he may soon push businesses to reopen, defying the advice of coronavirus experts. So you can kind of see that this article probably is going to be very critical of Trump, which it was. And you can read it if you like. But I can either disagree with this article and say Trump is great, or I can say, no, the article is right and he's incompetent. So, how do we go about making a good argument either way? I'm not going to tell you how I really feel, but I am going to show you how you can make an argument either way in a way that is smart, it's intelligent, and if you do this with everything in your life, whether it's relationships, religion, or politics, or anything else, you will have a better life. It's called critical thinking. Okay, moving on. So, first I try to look at Trump's words versus his actions. The article itself pointed out that Trump said, and he did say it in a tweet, we cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself. At the end of a 15-day period, we will make a decision as to which way we want to go. He got lambasted for this. Like, look, we know where the coronavirus is. We know what's happening. We've got to, lock down now. You're not listening to the Center for Disease Control. What are you talking about? So the article certainly takes that quote, and you can argue yourself that was an incompetent thing to say and to think. However, he also stated in the White House guidelines recently, it's right there in the White House homepage, do not go to any event of more than 10 people and practice social distancing. So if you're a Trump supporter, you can say, hey, his White House guidelines are very good. If you're not a Trump supporter, you could say, but his words to the people are confusing them, and that's why a lot of states are reopening. So you could argue either way. Another example. Here he is in the White House briefing room. There's his medical advisor who had to apologize later publicly for disagreeing with the president. You can see that Donald Trump is not too pleased with him right now. Donald Trump, on the one hand, says, I have the authority. I get to tell the governors what to do. What's my source? Well, he said it on television at the White House briefing room. I mean, sometimes you don't have to say a magazine or you don't have to say a newspaper. You can say, look, this was recorded on film in the White House briefing room, which it was. He stated over and over again, I'm in control. I get to tell the governors what to do when it comes to the coronavirus. He was lambasted. You could lambaste him for that, criticize him for that, certainly. People who support Trump can say, but go again to the White House, homepage. He says, listen to the governors. Listen to your local government. So you could argue either way. Finally, let's go to the Trump competent argument. Let's go to the heart of it. What I suggest you do for your paper and for your discussion posts in the future, And whenever you're doing your assignments, find references that are valid. Okay? Let's say, for the sake of argument, I am a Trump supporter. And I say that this article is wrong. He's doing a fine job. Trump enacted the Defense Production Act. Okay? What's my source? Well, CNN, which is normally very critical of the president, but it is considered a legitimate licensed news network. CNN, some people call it the centrist news network instead of cable because, they're very centrist. They kind of look at both sides. He also signed $2 trillion in aid. I use Forbes as a reference for that. That's a legitimate business magazine, but that is public knowledge. I mean, that has been the United States government and the Senate did pass this $2 trillion package. You could just cite the U.S. government. So I could say, hey, he's doing a good job. He enacted the Production Act to make medical supplies. He signed the $2 trillion relief fund. I'm a Trump supporter, let's say, and I'll say, back off, I'm done. Now, for those of you who are not Trump supporters and are angry with me, let me argue the other side. So here's, if you are doing the Trump incompetent argument, here's an example of how you could do that. So he's made over $1 trillion in cuts in medical benefits, including these medical centers, and Medicaid has been cut in half. Now, is that from some liberal left-wing magazine, which would not be a legitimate source? No, that's from the National Institute of Health. And it's cited right there in that medical journal. So this wasn't even a political journal. It wasn't a newspaper even. It was a medical journal from the National Institute of Health. Okay? He has not fully enacted the Defense Production Act. He has somewhat, but even a Republican governor recently says, we don't have near the equipment that we need. Please enact the Production Act fully. And that's from PolitiFact. And finally, the $2 trillion that has been signed, according to the relief bill itself, $500 billion goes to great, big, huge, wealthy companies. So again, you can argue either side. You have facts that I gave you that argues for the president, including his White House homepage that shows some decent guidelines, as well as the efforts he has made with the Production Act and with the relief bill. Or you can take a look at these facts and say, yeah, but these sources say that he is actually incompetent because of the cuts to medical benefits and to what he's actually doing with the Defense Production Act and big companies and so forth. So that is a way to argue for or against Trump or for or against an article about Trump. And again, it's completely up to you. It is completely up to you whether you like Donald Trump or you don't like Donald Trump. It is completely up to you whether you are for, researching global warming or you think global warming is a hoax. It is completely up to you whether you believe in gun control or you don't believe in gun control. And I can continue and go on and on and on. What I do want you to do, however, is don't just give me anecdotal stories and say, well, I, know someone who was hurt, so that's why everybody should have a gun, or I know somebody who hurt themselves with a gun, that's why nobody should have a gun. Those are stories that have nothing to do with legitimate sources and facts. Have whatever opinion you want, but back it up with the evidence. And also, if I was writing this paper, I would show both arguments like I did now. I would say, here's argument A and here's argument B, but then I would say which argument I am for by, talking about both sides of the coin. That is critical thinking. You look at both sides of the issue, and then you make a logical, sound, mature decision, and constantly saying to yourself, maybe I'm wrong. Once again, you can look at Wikipedia as maybe defined other sources, but Wikipedia in of itself is a blog site. It is not considered a valid source. A conservative or liberal talk show host or blogger is also not a legitimate source. If you are ever confused what a legitimate source is, you can ask me. But again, newspapers like the New York Times, the big city newspapers, New York Times, Chicago, the Atlanta Times, the LA Times, San Francisco, these are normally considered legitimate sources. The National Institute of Health, the Department of Justice, Government institutions that actually do research are considered legitimate sources. What a politician says, no. You can say this is what a politician says, but then you need to check it out if it is actually true. Hopefully, this gives you some guidance on how to be a critical thinker and go about your assignment. Now, finally, with the coronavirus, I spoke with a doctor today, as a matter of fact, a good friend of mine. I know some states are reopening. Has nothing to do with how I feel about politics, but I know some states, me seeing the news, are reopening massage parlors and tattoo parlors and restaurants. I have a friend who's in direct communication with the state bureaus and state health agencies. And don't take my word for it. You can look on the CDC. Right now, please stay indoors as much as you can. Social distancing. We're not out of the woods yet. Wear a mask. If you have a baby, it was recommended to me by a pediatrician, Dr. Sue Ann Park, I will tell you her name, to not put a mask on a baby because a baby has a hard time breathing and they don't understand what a mask is and they may chew on it and try to swallow it. So if you do have an infant, try to keep them indoors as much as possible and away from other people, but you yourself should wear a mask. Practice social distancing, stay indoors. I'm here to help you. Give me a call. Email me if you need to. I'll get over this hoarseness, and you guys are going to continue to do great. Keep up the good work. I'll talk to you soon. All right.